Adding a few vintage pieces into our home that was handed down to me by my parents is how my love for vintage items began. I found that they add an extra layer of comfort to my home. By living with them and discussing them, they bring comfort, connection, and continuity to our daily lives. You may be wondering, what is the distinction between vintage and antique? Many specialists agree that a vintage item is between 20 and 100 years old, and an antique is anything over 100 years old. Of course, unless you stumble across a great deal, expect to pay more for items that are older. Financial value may have its place, but it's the emotional value that make a house a home. Vintage pieces add a sense of warmth and character to a home. They are also things that not everyone has, so those who decorate with vintage pieces tend to have homes with a bit more character and flair. Decorating with vintage pieces adds texture and history, as well as personalizing your home. It has taught me that if I surround myself with the things I love, my home never goes out of style. Sentimental home furnishings are typically family pieces or items that remind us of a time or place, including photos of people we love. I have a special attachment to old photos and portraits. There are many that would say that photos belong in albums, but I wholeheartedly disagree. I love seeing framed photographs in a home, and I proudly display mine all over the house. I like grouping them and have many arranged on tables. I do this with old family portraits in vintage frames. Living with vintage items allows you to honor the past but not live in it. For instance, I have no interest in furnishing my home like I'm living in the mid-1800s, but I am drawn to the lines or colors of a few pieces from that era. Buy what you love, express yourself, and don't be afraid to mix periods. In addition to furniture pieces, a very popular way of adding vintage items to our home is with collections. And I believe the best way to decorate with a collection is to give them prominence in your space. But what if your collection has too many items or seems a little out of hand? First, recognize that you don't have to have all of your stuff on display at once. You can rotate your collections according to the seasons, or simply when you want a refreshed look. There are a few basic design principles when it comes to living with collections. First, color block your pieces. When you arrange anything by color, it harmonizes the objects and is more pleasing to the eye. This might mean assembling things of all one color or choosing just a few colors to display. Aim for symmetry or balance. When you have too many objects, assembling them in a way that looks orderly automatically gives everything a sense of unity. Often a display becomes more about the final collective look than about any individual object. If you are stuck on how to display your items, sometimes shopping vintage venues is a great way to find inspiration on how to display them. Bringing a vintage feel to any gathering is easy and fun. You can enjoy serving with vintage china and linens and even use place cards. Go a step further and send out actual invitations. And don't forget to don your vintage apron. Vintage cookbooks offer up old recipes that can become new favorites. My best recipes come from old church cookbooks. Recipes collected from the women of the congregation are among our favorites. While you're busy eating and having conversation, don't forget about vintage music. If you have a record player, your guests will enjoy the process of taking out the album, placing it on the turntable, flicking the switch, and watching the needle drop. Many second-hand bookstores sell vintage vinyls if you don't have a collection of your own. Don't forget about YouTube. You can find music from almost any era and have it playing in the background if you don't have a record player. What I love about vintage holiday decor is that certain pieces can evoke long forgotten memories, especially Christmas. Bringing out the decorations every year brings back so many memories. Before you know it, you're thinking or talking about a time and a place that is long gone, but is very real in that moment. Some of the most treasured Christmas finds don't hold a great deal of financial value, but they are priceless to me. A good rule of thumb is to shop for not only items you need or want, but also dimensions for furniture, picture frames, and more. When shopping flea markets and most antique shows, expect that most items are not priced. Even if they are, I pretty much guarantee you can get a better price. Many dealers expect that they will come down somewhat in price, so they typically ask for a higher amount in order to get what they want for the item. Like most things, it's not a matter of asking, but rather how you ask. Before you start, decide the amount you are willing to spend and stick to it. Also, don't make the offer too low or you will offend the dealer. One last tip, early birds at flea markets sometimes find the best things. Late birds get the best bargains. At the end of the day, when the dealer is packing up, you might get super low prices. It's less for them to pack and more money in their pocket. A celebration of the art of thrifting and decorating with antiques of every era, Vintage Living by Bob Richter is a full-service guide to treasure hunting, from flea markets, antique shows, and estate sales to country auctions, yard sales, and the online marketplace. Richter also imparts hard-won practical tips, such as how best to negotiate and haggle. Thank you for watching the video today. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Until next time, I wish you beauty and inspiration.